One of the first things I discovered walking into prison is the need to unjudge the heart. And what I mean by unjudging the heart is the fact that I think for most of us, when we think about the idea of prison, we think of a group of people who've done a lot of bad things and who probably need to think deeply about the things that they've done in the hope that they don't repeat all the bad things. And the whole idea of judgment becomes really important when one encounters this particular space. I was born 1 year after the Zimbabwean independence. My parents were South African in exile, and then when Nelson Mandela was released in '92, and then in '94, we had our first democratic elections in South Africa, we returned back home. On encountering this kind of weird space, this democracy in transition, where an apartheid regime was now finding its new way in greeting a nation filled with a sense of desire, a sense of rejuvenation, to find something that had been lost for so many decades and so many years, was the major challenge. A prison in South Africa is an extension of an horrific past. And so we have to be very careful in how we move into that space. With the young men that I work with, I often encounter people who have been punished in absolutely every single way. Someone who has been caught and then judged, and then from the moment of judgment, sent to a detention center, and then later on sent to a main prison. So one of the key things, and also one of the popular things in South Africa, is this desire to try and rehabilitate. And so the definition of rehabilitation becomes really complex. So unlike a lot of the language that we may use in these forums, the things that I have learned is that we don't use the word change when I'm walking into prison. When I tell the people that I work with, the company of actors that I've trained and that I work together with in engaging some of these processes, some of these projects, particularly in training Shakespeare with people, is we try to get into the habit of not using a particular kind of familiar language. And that language is, for example, hi guys, we would like to see you change. We would like to see you being transformed. We would like to be here and witness a difference. Now, this might come as a bit of a shock or somewhat confusing in terms of then, you would ask, well then why do you go into a space which requires some kind of rehabilitation and not use the term rehabilitation, and not use the very terms that define our rationale in entering into these spaces. And I believe that the human being sitting behind that bar is a reflection of myself. And so by encountering a person who has suffered an injustice and has also perhaps perpetrated an injustice, the last thing that I need to do to go there is to look at that person and say, you need to change. If anything, it is through my experience and through the opening up of a dialogue that a revelation of some kind of conversation will happen where, to some extent or the other, some kind of change will work. Now, a lot of people ask us, why do we do Shakespeare? I first encountered Shakespeare when I was about 8 years old. I could hardly really read, and it was those beautiful monosyllabic syllables of friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears. I didn't quite comprehend what I was saying, but somehow the vowel sounds and those consonants affected me. Later on, I began to understand perhaps what I was experiencing and what I was feeling. In 2006, with a single bullet, 2 people stripped naked were shot through their heads. In the middle of a road, it soon became apparent that it was a gang initiation in Cape Town in the Western Cape. One of those people was a Shakespearean actor. It sent shockwaves throughout the artistic industry in Cape Town. That actor was also in a production of Hamlet, a production which was going on tour for the Royal Shakespeare Company. I was in that production too. Having experienced so close and at such close proximity the death of someone, the murder of someone in a very unkind way, and then having still to perform an artistic endeavor, in this case, a Shakespearean tragedy, in the absence of that person who was soon replaced, opened up a range of experiences and possibilities for me in terms of what the capacity of Shakespeare is. It was through this weeping cast, as it were, an ensemble that was experiencing firsthand a terrible trauma, that the lens and the recognition of what exactly the Shakespearean text could carry became evident. So, South Africa is often described as a land of extremes. We have the highest statistics on murder, on rape, on hijackings. We have the second largest incarcerated rate in the world. And we also have the largest, the most fervent gap between those who are wealthy and those who are very, very poor. And it is precisely in this extremity, it is precisely within the dimension of this agony greeting beauty, this antithesis, that allows almost a hand-in-glove complement to a Shakespearean world. In 1604, when Hamlet was first published, you would walk around London and you would encounter a very robust, dirty, exotic place where there were decapitated heads, perhaps, on poles. The queen herself was paranoid, and there was a sense that danger was lurking around any corner, and that life couldn't be taken for granted. It is that same experience which is very useful when working in prison. A lot of interventions feel that when one goes into prison, we need to soften the environment. We need to kind of move in and allow these hardened criminals somehow to shed those terrible elements of themselves and become normal human beings. I find that this is a very problematic way of moving into incarcerated space. To match the anxiety of the inmate, to match the war within and without in the context of a prison space is really important when we are considering artistic rehabilitation processes moving into a prison. Because not only does it attain the attention of the individual, but the involvement means that there is a shorter distance between the war that is happening inside and the artistic endeavor that is happening on the outside. Now, one of the crucial things that I've discovered working in this environment is that, in a way, it's almost theater meeting theater. Many inmates wake up and they have a script, they have an act, and this act is one that is so crucial because it is what is going to allow this person to survive that day. And that act is a particular kind of facade, a facade that is determined by a space that knows hatred, that understands very deeply the concentrated menace that at any given moment, at any given time, your life could be taken away. So one is operating on extraordinary extremes from the word go. And it is the actor, almost at its highest level of survival, that one encounters in an incarcerated space. So here we have a possibility of transforming the fact that South Africa, yes, the country of my love, the country of my soul, has these awful, awful things, most terrible statistics, and people love Table Mountain and completely fear coming down the mountain in case something may happen to them. But here lies something so beautiful and so magic, in that the pain that is embedded within this consciousness can so freely express itself in such a powerful way, if given the chance, through appropriate measures and appropriate means. So, a theater experience in a prison space allows an actor, in a way, to unact and to dejudge. It is a stripping away of a whole number of layers that are there. Layers that start from birth, essentially. Layers that are developed over the circumstances of time, of place and environment. And then, now given the opportunity to invest through another character the opportunity to find that sense of vulnerability, to begin to tap into the waters of pain and the waters of love, into the fragile essence of what it is to be held in an invisible mother's arms, into the possibility of knowing that there is a thing called love, and that by weeping tears through this character, you won't be bullied, and you won't be taken into a corner and having your limbs chopped off. But your comrades, your fellow inmates, will rise out of their chairs and give you a hand of applause and say, how did you do that? How did you manage to emote that way? How did you play this Hamlet and I saw tears coming down your face? How did you play this King Lear, erupting the fullness of yourself with laughter that is so clear and so crisp that you were not acting? I almost felt that it was you for the first time.